Unspoken expectations lead to premeditated resentments. There's always room for improvement. When do you actually end up redefining what wealth and success means to you? How do employees feel there? How
Yeah.
are they interacting with them? Do they feel safe to speak up? I set him up for failure because I didn't.
Welcome to Builders, the podcast for impact-driven leaders who are done carrying it all and ready to scale with clarity, strategy, and freedom. I'm your host, Alex Snyder, strategic growth architect, creator of the CEO Recode, and second brain to leaders who are building brilliant companies without sacrificing every ounce of their time, energy, or sanity. Each episode, I sit down with bold leaders who've rebuilt, recalibrated, or redefined what it means to lead well and live well on their own terms. We talk messy pivots, leadership upgrades, tactical wins, and the deep personal work it takes to build a business that actually works for you. If you love the episode, make sure you follow, rate, and share it with another leader who's building big and wants to build smarter. And if you're listening and thinking, damn, I need someone in the guts of my business with me, let's talk. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth and define 2 to 3 high-impact shifts you can implement now to regain traction and build momentum. Now, let's dive in. Let's build it better. All right. Welcome to Builders. Owais, thank you so much for being here today. You are the founder at Visual Q, a brand consultancy, and I cannot wait to dig into both brands and how you got there and what you're building. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Amazing. I always like to ask you to introduce yourself in your own words and just who are you and what are you building to kick us off?
Sure. So, of course, founder and principal at the Visual Q. What uh, we what we built at the Visual Q is essentially a brand consulting firm for lower middle market companies that are either moving into new markets. They're having either issues or they're growing their existing teams. And we wanted to essentially help them answer two fundamental questions, which is why should a great client come hire you or buy from you? Or why should a great employee come work for you? And this is where we sense that there's a significant amount of a gap, primarily because uh, what clients and what employees value doesn't necessarily align with what the companies that we work with think that those clients and employees value. And that gap, Alex, is essentially where profits are bleeding. That gap is where enterprise value of those particular companies are diminishing, and so or is diminishing. And what we wanted to do is essentially use essentially something that wins the hearts and minds of the people that you interact with, uh, as a way to solve that problem.
I love that. I can't wait to dig more into that. But I always want to start with your journey. I want to start with, how did you get here? I want to get to how you knew you were meant to be a builder, but I'm going to just like foreshadow. We love a plot
Sure.
twist. You were not
Yeah.
classically trained in brands and marketing. So how did you get here if you didn't go to school for this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, just like any other entrepreneur or anyone that's going or has gone into business, learning never stops, right? And I think my just early uh, experience of constantly being in the academics. I was pursuing a healthcare route, and right out of high school, I happened to land an internship at a wealth management firm, Merrill Lynch, and worked under an extraordinary wealth manager who saw my potential that I didn't realize that I had, and said, "Look, you're great with putting stuff together on a computer. I don't have that skill set, but I have the vision. How about I tell you what the vision is, and we'll put together this, 200-page pitch deck that I'm going to be using to pursue other business owners to essentially invest their money with me. And so, gaining that exposure from not just putting together the pitch deck, not just, the visual consistency of branding in general. I think that was my initial exposure. And then of course, the content within it, as I started thinking about a lot of that, uh, pursuing the healthcare route uh, over time became less appealing for me. Let's just put it that way. And not to mention the fact that there were a tremendous amount of industry changes that were happening that what I saw is it didn't necessarily have the level of potential for me where I'd be able to call my own shots in that particular
Mm.
career. And I think that that is rooted in what and why I do things the way that I do, is because I wanted to be able to uh, uh, do things on my own terms. I wanted to be able to direct, and be in the driver's seat, and that was starting to become less and less available for anyone pursuing that particular path. And so I really sat down and started thinking about this, along with while I was going to school, I was picking up these projects to essentially do, the creative aspect of branding for, just for founder-led companies, pretty small. However, at that point in time, like I said earlier, it's like there was a gap. No one was doing, and many of these B2B type companies didn't necessarily put and invest into putting together even a consistent brand, from whether it be a messaging standpoint, whether it be from a visual standpoint. And so, to the best of my ability, I helped them do that and realized that I was growing a portfolio that I didn't have any intention of growing. And so, once I decided to make that pivot, it was fairly easy because I already had a B2B portfolio. I mean, and I will say that it was quite rewarding, Alex, to be able to go into all of these different companies that had their own unique strengths, that their own specific types of products, and their own specific technicalities that you have to learn in order to be able to brand those. And so I found that actually very rewarding, because once you pick up on that, now you're able to essentially go into that industry and use that as part of their language. It's like, I think you and I were talking offline. You said you've traveled so many different countries. I
Mm.
imagine you go into that country as a foreigner, not being able to speak their language.
Mm.
How likely are you to be able to connect with them? How likely are you to be able to navigate through that particular country and get the most out of it, right?
Mm.
Very similarly, what I found was that the minute that you speak their language and their reasons, their ways of communicating with one another, the easier it is for you to be able to establish rapport and establish yourself as someone that is, I hate to use the term expert, but someone that at least knows uh, their way around in that particular industry, and is
Qualified.
able to give them exactly qualified. So they have it at least sets that impression, and I use that term very, very specifically, primarily because that's what we do.
Yeah.
So really, that's the origin story in terms of how I found myself in this industry
I love that. It
and in
sounds
this
like
business.
you kind of knew you were a builder from day one, that you were going to build businesses, but almost sort of serendipitously. Like it was sort of, it wasn't a grand plan. It was following your opportunities and mentors and passions and curiosity. And while you were talking, there were sort of three things that came to mind. I'm gonna like drop those and just see what
Sure.
those kind of give you. Was one was curiosity. Two was like tenacity, because picking up contracts and building things is not easy to do. The easier thing is to apply for jobs. And the third one is internal locus of control, which I know you and I have talked about before, but I feel like those were the things that came to mind when you were describing. It was like there was a curiosity, and then there was a tenacity to kind of like just keep working it out. And then the internal locus of control, for if someone's listening, I apologize, it's a psych term, but it's basically, master of your own destiny, right? Like the
Yeah.
belief
Yeah.
that you genuinely are driving, your outcomes as opposed to things happening to you. Um,
Correct. Absolutely.
does that resonate? Like, is that kind of an fair
Yeah.
assessment? How do you think those
And
play in?
one thing that I left out, Alex, is I'm a third generation entrepreneur. My both of my parents were entrepreneurs, and of course didn't start out that being that way. But again, and same thing. My grandfather in Pakistan was an entrepreneur himself, owned several businesses, textile mill, and again, that's essentially been a part of our story. That's been a part of our family. And naturally, my parents, my dad has had several different business endeavors over since he was 18. And same thing, as soon as we all immigrated to America, uh, they of course started both well educated, but humbled themselves to work at a Taco Bell, work at KFC, to just to make ends meet at the very beginning. Even though and imagine if someone over here, whether it be in America, whether it be in Canada, wherever, right, in the first world, imagine someone graduating with a 4-year degree, and typically will say, I have a 4-year degree. Why am I going to go work at a Taco Bell or at a fast food joint, right? On most occasions, I would probably categorize myself in that exact same sort of the mindset. Uh, However, when I look at my parents and saw that when you use these adjectives like tenacity, when you use the adjective of inner locus of control, and what was the other one that you used?
Curiosity.
Curiosity. I would say that that wasn't inherent to just myself. I think it was there, but it was woken up because I saw my parents essentially, exhibiting that level of self-determination. I saw my parents exhibiting that level of commitment, that dedication, that resilience. And so, when I saw the level of determination that they had when growing their business, and still making sure that they were present for both my brother and myself. I
Hmm.
mean, it just raises the level of standards in your mind to the point where I'm like, today, if there's anyone that's I don't say this in a negative manner, but if there are two people who have probably contributed to me having an imposter syndrome today, it's probably those two, because I can't level up to their standard,
Wow.
right? And it's not because they say that, it's just, it's what I've set up in my mind.
Yeah.
And so that's what I shoot for. And I would say that I credit them a tremendous amount, because they had they were gravitating towards coming to America with that belief that this is where this is the country that is defined by a self-determination. This is the country that allows for you to make anything of yourself, and it gives you that blank canvas to be able to do that. And I can't underscore that enough.
Amazing. How just incredible that I hope they listen to this and get to hear that from you. I'm sure you tell them, but like what an incredible perspective and feeling to have, towards your family. You said earlier, learning never stops. And I have this mixed feeling about entrepreneurship because I love that it's out there. I love that it's talked about. I love that it's more visible and people understand that there are different ways to do it. And it's being sold, is just my opinion online. Like it's
Oh yeah.
sold as an end result, a panacea of like everything that ails you about your situation and your job, like just become an entrepreneur. Um, and we love a branding, but like, also there's a lot of realities of you have to constantly be moving. You constantly need to be learning, adjusting. Like there is a personality or a set of characteristics that I think are very required. And if that kind of isn't who you are, then entrepreneurship maybe isn't for you, and not from a gatekeeping point of view, just from a, again, thinking about who you are and what you want and what the
Certainly.
optimal path to get there is. Um, I think there's, it's kind of, I think you and I have talked about moving goalposts. Like, how has that played a role in your journey? Where did you start and where are you now?
Certainly. And I think that that also connects with our purpose at the visual cue and the why,
Mm.
what drives us. It took me probably 10 to 12 years, Alex, to figure out exactly what that purpose was. It was there. It was always there. But I didn't understand and I didn't know how to articulate it until uh, a certain point and a certain inflection point where I said, you know what, there's always room for improvement. I think it almost just very organically just came out. And that's when I realized that's where we're at. When you say that the learning never stops, right? That is part of, I wouldn't just say that that's just limited to entrepreneurship. I think that that's limited to practically anything.
Mhm.
You know, you spoke with a colleague of mine yesterday, and he describes me as I have an anti-complacency policy,
Oh my
and I
God,
certainly
love
do.
that.
I
Tagline.
certainly do. Yeah. I'm gonna give that to Ken Proctor.
Yeah.
That's something that he coined. But yeah, I mean certainly having that anti-complacency policy, that standard for yourself should be something that it I don't think is should be limited to entrepreneurs, but I think that it is almost a given for entrepreneurs. It is a given for anyone that decides to go into business and is not just running that business at a bare minimum. I think that that's probably what gets under my skin the most is the business that are continuing to survive primarily at a bare minimum in terms of what their output looks like, in terms of what their customer interaction looks like, in terms of what their employee satisfaction looks like, right? Obviously, all of that. Well, then let's take a look at your books and let's take a look at your P&Ls and see how that's showing up there,
Yeah. I love
right?
that. And I think for me, I've always talked about like continuous improvement and
Certainly.
mindset. And I'm a believer that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So you're talking about
Thank you.
business, the P&L, the this, and I'm like, cool. And in your life, like that needs to be happening. And
Of
I
course.
think very rarely are you going to be optimal at it in one place and have it be devoid in another. It may not be, fully
Yeah.
balanced, like equal across the board, but I really love that. But anti-complacency policy, I'm obsessed. I love it. I can't wait. Ken is going to join us. So,
Oh,
on the
fantastic. Okay, I'm
episode.
I'm happy to
So,
hear that.
yes, we'll be
Wonderful.
looking forward to more of those gems from him.
Oh yeah, he's got a lot. Your audience is going to walk away with Kenisms, and I mean it's just going to be every 5 minutes he's going to say something
I love it.
salient where you're going to like, oh man, I wish I had a notebook
Yeah.
to just
My,
write something on, right?
my old business
So,
partner has a notes stock in his phone called Alexisms. Apparently, I have odd expressions that I did not realize are
wow,
unusual. So I'm
it's
very
great. I
excited to
mean,
have
when
Ken on. Just,
yeah, absolutely. And I mean it's great when you those show up for you and for yourself, right? Because that's what again, I look at everything from the brand lens,
yeah.
and when that starts showing up for people, it's really cool because that's your unique voice. That helps you capture what that voice is for your brand
Mhm.
that is now equipping you to be able to get you to tell your story in a way that is
Mhm.
dramatically different from the rest of the people that might be doing the exact same thing as you.
Yes. So you also said you wanted to do things on your terms, and success on
Mhm.
your terms is one of the, it's not an Alexism, but we talk about it a lot in
Yeah.
my business and with my clients. And I what I've coined is like wealthy leadership, right? Which is building a business on your terms, the business of your dreams, the role that you are optimal in, and then the organization to support that without sacrificing, your mental and physical health, your family, your community, and whatever lights you up, whatever makes you the best version of you, right? And so, while yes, that is a kind of a formula, it's one within which everybody gets to dictate what each component of the formula actually means for them. And I would love to hear about what success on your terms means for you today. And are there any trade-offs that you're not no longer kind of willing to make?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, it's also a work in progress and a constant modification of how you define wealth and success. I would say that, when I started out the business, you very specifically talked about this earlier, which is entrepreneurship is oversold right now,
Mm.
right? And entrepreneurship and business ownership in the way that it's sold by your social media influencers, which to me is extraordinarily cringe when I see this. I'm like, who who is going to be your client when you are videographing yourself coming out of a Lamborghini and
You're going to take
or
that example.
staging a photo shoot in front of a rented private jet at the that's not even going to take off. Like who is your target client here, right? um so about 15 to 18 years ago, when I was freelancing and doing all of that, obviously the big picture is wealth in terms of accumulation of material possessions, right? And wealth in terms of a luxury lifestyle, uh, and not necessarily thinking about exactly what the underlying purpose of that should be. And so I think over time, uh, as that becomes a byproduct rather than something that's a target, you
Mm.
start, and then you also go through your own sets of adversities, your own sets of challenges, setbacks, and those get you to kind of reconfigure where your North Star is. I think that is where that's probably the piece that gets missed in all of this. It's like, when do you actually end up redefining what wealth and success means to you? At which points in your life? And I would say every single time I've had a setback, whether it be in my personal life in a romantic level, whether it be in my business life, maybe a client left, right? And or perhaps an employee that I mishired, which I will share with you. I think that was a big learning moment of how do I want my business to be defined, and what do standards look like for me, and what does success and wealth looks like for me. I immediately started changing that definition, and I started looking at the people around me, particularly clients who were successful, particularly clients who had accumulated and were generating revenue 5 times what I was generating at the time,
Mm.
and said, what does this person embody? Uh, why do I admire this person so much? Is it because of the Mercedes or whatever it is that's standing outside in the parking lot when I visit his office, or is it something else? And
Mhm.
the more and more time I spent with that particular client, I'll tell you, he is someone of service. He is someone that, in spite of, um, in spite of all of the accumulation of wealth that may have happened, to me, he will take employees that have absolutely no educational background for the role that he's wanting to fill. And somehow there are employees at this particular client's office that have been there for the last 8 years, have had no educational background for that particular role, and have succeeded and ascended in those roles. And I to this day, now we only check in on a quarterly basis, but to this day, I'll still go and just be in his energy,
Yeah.
because
I think
that to
that is
me
the
just,
ultimate leader, though, right? It's the
yeah,
person who inspires you in the sense that you're like, I want to impress you. I want to deliver
yeah,
for you. I want that. And I feel like I can ask you a question. I feel like you
certainly.
are there for me. It's this unique combination. There's actually
Right.
research out there on it around what do they call it? I'm gonna like mix it up, but it's basically like warmth and competence. And
Right.
there's actually a ton of research on it, which do a whole other
Absolutely.
conversation about it. But I've really experienced that as well. And I often have a saying like great leaders are built, not born. And I think often we instinctually define and develop via emulation, right? That's kind of how we're programmed to learn. And I think choosing leaders we respect and admire is really important. But to your
Yeah.
point, questioning what it is about them and then looking for the opportunities to um, get kind of closer to them and learn the nuances so that you can then make a determination. And I sometimes have said to my clients when they're going through big shifts, to the point of like, if there's something big that's coming today, or you're in a moment where you like something big comes up unexpectedly, how can you kind of have a like, what would Bob do? Like, how can you almost say, how would this person handle it if you feel like
That's a good point.
aren't sure, or you are feeling maybe quite like reactive about it, right? That's leadership. It brings up all our
That
shit.
is leadership. Exactly.
Personal development
Yeah.
course none of us signed up for. And yet, or maybe we signed up for it, but I love that you talked about that client where, yeah, he has the, I'm gonna say trappings of wealth, right? The
Right.
external trappings of wealth, but what is it really? Because there are other people who have that who you probably don't want to be like if you
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Exactly. I think it was, uh, why can't I remember her name right now? But the founder of Spanx. And as a matter of fact, her husband was talking about this on a podcast.
Mm,
So he said that she believes that money magnifies your character. Whatever you were prior to that, uh, it magnifies it.
absolutely. I think wealth
So if
and
you were,
power reveal and
yeah,
amplify and magnify, to your point,
yeah,
what kind of was underneath to start with.
whatever was underlying it. Exactly, exactly. And so uh, I genuinely, try to look for that now and look for those sort of characteristics. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about this the other day. It was like, yeah, you know what? I've made it a habit when I go in to initially to speak with, like for intro meetings with clients. Primary, what I try to do is I'll set about 15 to 20 minutes aside for a facility walkthrough or an office walkthrough. And what that does is two things. It's intended to do two things. One is no longer is the decision maker or the decision makers uh, on a separate side, sitting on the separate side. Now we're walking. The energy that all of that shifts, right? Now they're proudly talking about their office and their facility and what they do there. And so there's a rapport building aspect of it. The second, and what I'm really trying to find out is, what do employees think? How do employees feel there? How
Yeah.
are they interacting with them? Do they feel safe to speak up? Do they feel excited when the boss is walking by and, hey, look what I've got going on today? And very similarly, what's the demeanor of the boss, the decision maker that is uh eventually or could become my client?
Yeah.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm vetting them as much as they might be vetting me, and I'm trying to figure out if, as you know, uh, I'm trying to figure out exactly what that brand represents outside of that boardroom, and it's going to tell me a lot,
I love
right?
that. You and I are going to absolutely nerd out about like neuromarketing and all the
Oh
things
yeah,
when I come to Houston. But I just want to pull out two things I heard there and make sure I got
yeah.
them for people who are listening. So one was just the dynamics of when you engage with people, sitting versus standing versus walking. So I used to take my one-on-ones on coffee walks. Not every
Mm,
single time. Sometimes we sat down and had more formal.
right.
A lot of
Yeah,
my weekly one-on-ones, I was like, let's go for a walk. Let's go for that. Like,
yeah.
people loosen up. Even like
Absolutely.
in relationships, right? Like personal, like when you're driving side by side, you talk about stuff that's like maybe a little harder than when you're like
Exactly.
sit down and stare each other in the eyes, and
Yeah,
that's intense.
absolutely. When
Um,
you're, I mean, it's the nonverbal cues and that those subtle underlying types of behaviors of even just sitting on two opposing sides
exactly.
makes a world of a difference, Alex.
Yeah.
It just makes, again, it's the subconscious feeling of you're not on my side, you're
You're facing
against
off.
me. Exactly. Even though you would like to, right? I mean, the whole make eye contact when you talk to people, that's all great. But at the same time, it's these small little things that happen inside of our brains that, again, I went down that line of branding where it was constant just asking questions. Why do we make decisions the way that we do, whether it be in buying a certain product, whether it be buying into a specific ideology, whether it be making a decision of whether to go work out this morning and whether not to go work out. They're all seated in subconscious beliefs and subconscious drivers.
Yeah. So I love that. And I just wanted to call that out for anyone who's listening. Like
Yeah.
anything you're doing, whether we're talking about business, clients, and employees, even thinking about the nuances of like the seating arrangements. We always do this too in consulting too. Like we would get into a boardroom as quick as we could and spread out, right? It's not clients on one side, us on the other. Like we're
Yeah.
like spread out. We sit amongst, we're a team
Yeah.
already,
That's a
right?
good
So
strategy.
how you do all of those things is so important. And the other thing I heard from you, I want to call out is this, I love this because I'm a relationship, long-term business kind of person, right?
Yeah.
You are in there not only meeting the person who is the economic decision maker, not only selling, there's nothing wrong with selling, but you're in there assessing the fit of the client for you. Can I actually help them? Can I, is this a good company that I can feel great representing and build a long-term relationship? Are their clients going to be around for a while? And you're also getting to know the people who you're going to have to work with long term.
Absolutely.
The person who signs the
Absolutely.
check is rarely the person who is responsible to
Yeah.
get you what you need to deliver your work. And I think
Certainly.
that, again, is fundamental. I used to put our proposals a page and it was like, here are all the roles from you that we're going to need. This is the type of person we suggest. This is the commitment that they need weekly. You have to be prepared to deliver that as a client for us to deliver what we're promising. And that's kind of
Absolutely.
a version of what I heard. And I think that's
Yeah.
vital. And if anyone's listening, I think that's such a key for success and long-term clients.
Yeah. And one thing I want to add to that, Alex, is again, in our world, typically we do work with and work alongside the decision makers, the C-level execs,
Yeah.
as much as we involve some of the other employees that are middle management or field services, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Everyone is involved in the culmination of that brand and where it's headed. However, here's the key point for everyone to remember. It doesn't matter what you sell or as a business owner, it does not matter what you sell. It doesn't matter if it's a service or product. Your reputation is going to be on the line in terms of who you sell it to.
Yeah.
If if you have not predefined what your standards are, if you have not predefined what it will take for the right client to be able to succeed with you, you have already set them up for failure. That's on you. That is not on the client.
Yeah.
And it's very similarly now, I think, is a good transition for me to speak about this one particular story that really just, woke me up. It shocked me to my
Yeah.
core and it woke me up. And it was about 7 years ago. I had doubled my revenue, uh, and I was coming into the new year just overly confident. Said, this is the time for me to hire a number two. This is the time for me to grow my team. And went into it very haphazardly. Now looking back retrospectively, at that point in time, super confident. And I hire someone that I knew, thinking that that was more than enough for me to feel confident and feel trustful in this person's ability to come in and help us grow and get to that next level. If I was able to double it last year, let's see if I can double it again this year and see where we're going to be. And if we can double it, yeah, I'm going to be able to pay this guy's salary, and he's going to be more than enough, right? Uh, well, things didn't work out that way. And again, I'm gonna just I'll give you the teaser here. I set him up for failure. Even though as much of a disappointed that this person was, here's what I realized. Um, in a matter of 8 months, it all just came tumbling down in a matter of 8 months. So it didn't even take a whole year, Alex. I
Fail
lost.
forward, fail fast,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. I mean, and if I can quantify how much I lost, not gained, I quantified how much I lost that year just in actual capital. It was six figures in capital.
Mhm.
Not, and then if I was to quantify the amount of opportunities that I lost as a result of that decision, as a decision was mine, I would probably say about a $500,000.
Mm.
$500,000 worth of opportunities
Wow.
lost, primarily because we were in behind the scenes. We were so busy in the trenches trying to figure things out and trying to make up for some of the mishaps that had
Mhm.
happened along the way. And am I going to, at that point in time, I was looking at him and saying, well, that's the culprit. Well, he dropped the ball on this. He dropped the ball on this. He dropped the ball on this. Once he was out of the picture, I sat with that for about a good 6 to 12 months. And I looked back, and it was at that 6 to 12 month moment, Alex, is when we were refreshing our brand. This is probably tail end of COVID, moving into 2021. We were about to launch a new brand. I had already defined exactly, and then I looked back, and as a matter of fact, you had Jeremy on. Jeremy, I very specifically recall, he said, think about your last five, think about the last five people that you fired.
Mhm.
Why did you fire them? And that just opened up my eyes, and it just, I mean, the
What a
story
trend.
that was built from that is, I think, and I still use that question in my brand workshops because it's a pattern interrupt. You're not expecting that, right? If someone asks you, "Hey, tell me your core values," no one's going to tell you your core values, right? I mean, they're going to give you something generic, but how you get to those core values in terms of the story that you develop of why did you fire the last five people that worked for you, or why did you walk away from the last two clients that you worked with? Why did you walk away from a romantic relationship that you were in with for 6 years,
Mhm.
right? Those things will then help you define exactly what it is, what type of standards you're unwilling to compromise. What is it that you're willing to uphold above anything else, including money? And those standards become the filter by which everyone that, whether they be a client, whether they be an employee, passes through and is allowed to essentially given that read a measuring stick of saying, look, this is what you have to uphold yourself to. This is the standard that you have to uphold yourself to. And and that's what was missing. In retrospect, that's what was missing. And in retrospect, that's why I set him up for failure because I didn't
Mhm.
define those clearly.
So that's so interesting. And I just want to like extrapolate a tiny bit because this is something
Yeah,
I see all the time and I talk about quite a lot is expectation setting, right? Like the root of most unhappiness is misaligned expectations.
absolutely.
Expectation setting is so vital and it starts like before you even hire somebody, right? It starts in the
Yeah,
interview process. So for me, one of the things I tell people is like, I only hire people who can manage up. And then I tell them what that means and we have a conversation about whether they have experience with it, etc. But the thing that I see that I heard in your story is when you are bringing on higher level people, and sometimes, I don't know if this was your case, but sometimes you're bringing on people who are like almost higher level than you, right? Like you're bringing in someone to take a big role in your company, and you're like, well, I don't want to tell them how to do their job. And it's like, or they should know, right? Like it's one
yeah,
or both. And it's like, actually, no, like their job is so important and it's so big and it maybe didn't exist before. And so, like, you're uncomfortable telling this important high level person that you believe in how to do their job. No, you're telling them how
yeah,
you want to work together. And you
exactly.
need to define that either for them or with them. And what happens is like it gets more uncomfortable as you go through the months and you're like,
Yeah,
this isn't good. This is the person's not doing. But you're like, well, did you tell them what success was? Did you tell them? Like now you're going to go tell them about why you're not happy about the thing you didn't ask them for.
correct. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I, how can I help you succeed in your role was a question that was not integrated into my vernacular up until that
Yeah.
time. What does success look like to you? Wasn't it, I mean, basic questions.
Yeah.
So it was again, it was one of those inflection points in my own life that I needed to, start thinking about and be a bit more intentional about,
Yeah.
regardless of who comes into my life, right? Whether it be an
Yeah.
employee, whether it be a romantic partner, whether it be a client,
Yeah.
I'm doing them a disservice by not vetting them.
Yes. And I just cannot agree with you more because so many of my clients, and when I first started working, it was, it was all men, just due to the industries that I had been in. And, they would come into the kind of like feedback sessions and they'd be like, everything is better, right? Like home is better, family, relationship, because boundaries, communications, expectation setting, right? Like clarity
Certainly.
is not just for your team and partners and employees and
Yeah,
customers. It's for everything. Um,
absolutely.
so I love
Yeah,
that. We could have a
clear.
whole other conversation about.
Yeah. No, but I mean, again, it all it all blends into all of this
Mhm.
conversation primarily because if you're trying to build a business, clarity and communication doesn't necessarily mean just communicate clearly and consistently to your clients and to your market, right? It happens first on the inside. And if things are dysfunctional on the inside, expect things to be dysfunctional on the outside. You can't you can't mask dysfunction with a facelift.
No, no. I mean, it's like anything, right? If you're not
Yeah,
healthy on the inside, it will start to
correct.
show up on the outside. And
Exactly.
some people who are more practiced will spot it earlier, but eventually
Certainly.
it becomes
Certainly.
apparent. I'd love to hear, just you talked about, building a business and expectation setting. What's your take on having it all? Some
My take on having it all.
people talk about a lot. When I talk
I
about this,
think, yeah, I don't know if I I think the having it all also has a different, I guess it has a different definition
yeah,
for different people. For some, it might very well be that it's just all material possessions. For others, it might very well be that having it all just means that they're constantly in a life of service, right? That's what fills them. I think that uh, what fulfills you is probably a different, right? You can have it all and still feel unfulfilled,
Yeah. I think
right?
that's really the crux of what I have
Yeah.
reflected on over my own evolution and the angle that I take on this with the work I do. And that's, I was like, I just want to like lob that over and see, but I
No,
would love to just hear really, I want to dig a little more into like brand and your experience
sure.
and growth, but I would love just since it is such a big part of what we talk about, kind of what is success on your terms? How have you arrived there? Are there things that you find like interplay? Like, actually, this isn't a luxury. When I keep this at a standard, it helps me keep my other standards.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, now today, the way that I have again defined success, or the way that I look at uh, how I have gotten to where uh, things look successful to me at
Mhm.
the moment, right, is primarily as a result of setting those standards, not settling for less. It all sounds like cliche, but I'll tell you, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're a business owner that's just starting out or the business owner that's been there for 20 years running a $50 million firm. At the end of the day, if you have not clarified exactly what you represent and what your standards are, well, someone else is going to define it for you, and they're going to do it at a much, much lower standard than whatever it is for you, and that's going to wake you up.
With that. So I want to get a little more tactical. You know, we
Yeah.
potentially have very accomplished listeners. We potentially have very accomplished, very senior listeners, very new listeners who are like in the early stages. And what is something that you wish you had known when you were landing your first six-figure client, like getting to that next level?
Oh boy. I think, and this is probably going to speak uh, for you based off of what you do. Process.
Mm.
I did not have the right process that I could tailor around that six-figure client. And you indicated this just earlier. You talked about expectation setting, right? Unspoken expectations lead to premeditated resentments. And if I didn't ask, if I didn't ask what their expectations were around X, Y, and Z, well, I could not tailor a process around that, right? It was great. You celebrated. We got our first six-figure client,
And then,
but again, do not go chase your six-figure client hoping to build a process around that six-figure client after, right? What I would suggest for anyone, it doesn't matter whether you're chasing a six-figure client or whether you're chasing a seven-figure client or an eight-figure client or a project. Go speak to and find out how you can actually speak to clients that are awarding contracts of that size. Speak to them, speak to multiple decision makers, and find out exactly what will it take to enable a project like that to be delivered successfully,
I love that.
and then design your process around that.
Yeah.
If you again How are you going to take on a project like that if you don't have the back end for it? Guess what happens? This is exactly where and why, and one of the reasons why we get brought in is because if you don't have the operational back end to be able to fulfill on your brand promise, what do you think that's going to do to your reputation?
Thank you. I
I
didn't
was,
mean for you to be an ad. But I say, there's times to sell, there's times to build foundation, there's times to
yeah,
you overgrow and oversell, you end up in a position where you risk your reputation because you can't deliver. And
certainly.
yeah, it's
Certainly. I mean, I lucked out primarily because that, first of all, that client came through a referral, was very understanding, gave us an extension, allowed for us to redeem ourselves, and of course succeeded. But again, you know, have not been as lucky in some other scenario and may have taken a tremendous amount of a hit on our reputation and not been able to acquire additional clients after that,
Yeah.
right? Or have had to basically undergo a much longer path to then getting back on track
Hmm.
and refreshing our reputation. But I mean, again, this is again, if you're not operationally sound, don't make it look like and create the perception that you're operationally sound. This is what I meant when I said earlier that you can't mask dysfunction with a facelift, because so many clients and so many companies come to me that, and it's laughable to the point where I have to, I've got a pretty bad poker face, but I almost try to, hold it. And I say, look, um, you're wanting to create customer and talent retention by updating your website, aesthetic updates to your website and your logo and your brochure. You think all of those things are going to compel your employees to stay with you? All of those things are going to compel your clients to say, "Oh, great. I don't want to be just a one-time buyer. I want to be a lifetime buyer."
Yeah. Because you
It's
chose
not
the
going to happen.
right one.
It's not going to be, you have not clearly defined what matters to them.
Yeah.
You're making those assumptions. And so, again, the dysfunctions that are happening behind the scenes
Mm.
uh, first need to be fixed. And it may very well be. So, like a good client for us, I always like to make sure, like I said earlier in the conversation, that operationally they're sound. And
Yeah.
what's happening is perceptually in the marketplace, there's a gap that their operation isn't up to date, or their so we have to essentially create that value for them in the marketplace from a perception standpoint.
Mm.
But they can deliver. They're fully capable of delivering on their brand promises at a very high standard.
Yeah. I love that. I love that we're digging into brand a little bit, and I want to you
Yeah,
keep dropping some of the value that you're dropping. And just before I ask you like a more deep question, for anyone who's
sure.
listening who doesn't speak fluent brand marketing, etc., right? Like I think you've clearly just said what I often say, like a brand is not a logo, right? As someone who's
Yeah.
also just gone through, we rebranded the podcast 2 seasons ago, myself going through big kind of rebrand with, leaders who build like talk about the value that you define and kind of what brand consulting firm does. You have cool stuff on your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You have evolve or dissolve. You have the 2 questions you help people with. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
If someone's listening and they're, not necessarily going to go click through and read it, like, let's give
Yeah.
like a little bit of that. Brand is not marketing, right? Brand is kind of the top of the food
No.
chain.
Exactly. Well, so if you look at it just from a linear process, a chronological process, uh, sales is not going to define the brand. Marketing is not going to define the brand, although sometimes they do end up getting pulled into that. Brand consulting agency like ours is going to first come in. It's that very first piece that sometimes tends to get overlooked. And essentially what it's helping you define is who you are, what you represent, who you serve, why you serve them, right? And then start looking at it from the perspective of the stakeholders that you serve, whether it be employees, whether it be customers, whether it be investors. What do things look like from their world? If you want to know what your customer buys, see the world from your customer's eyes. Right? If you want to know what your employees buys, see the world from your employees' eyes. And on and on and on and on.
Mm.
And if a great brand to me, Alex, and everyone else that's listening, a great brand, a successful brand is one that has monopolized the market and monopolized the market emotionally
Mm.
and at a mental level, to
Mhm.
the point where they are seen as a non-negotiable, not just another option.
I love that. So we hear a lot about, marketing and how people buy these days, right? You spoke about the emotional buy. So many of us attribute things to brands that we have not consciously agreed to, have that connection. It's just been built
Oh
up.
yeah.
it is firmly, placed within our brains. If you're thinking about, an entrepreneur or an executive, what do you think is most vital for them to understand about branding in order to scale a business?
In order to scale a business, certainly, like I said earlier, you're going to require buy-in from both employees and clients and customers.
Mm.
And over time, in order to continue to maintain that scale, you're what I would and what I always encourage companies to do is on an annual basis refresh what's changed in the expectations of both.
Mm.
Go back and renew. Let me ask you a question. I mean, are your clients thinking? Are your clients thinking and behaving and buying the same way in 2025 versus how they were doing it 4 years ago?
No. And I
Think
love
about all
that.
the
I'm a
factors that
annual
changed.
process, quarterly process person.
Yeah,
It's a lot of what, for me, when you mature a business, it's about cycles and understanding that you have to revisit things.
certainly.
That you will, to your point around clients and employees, what's important to people changes over time. And if you don't
Absolutely.
understand that, you won't reposition, you won't remain
Yeah.
relevant. But I think in a bigger, because we are on a leadership podcast.
Mhm.
I also say, you will face similar things at 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, 50 million. You'll come back around. I really believe in it so much. I even have like the spiral of life, like as part of my tattoo. And you have to know that you have to look at it from the side. Then you can see that it's a spiral. You'll face it. You'll have more resources. You'll probably be able to handle it faster. You are going to face it again. It doesn't mean, if you look at it from the top, it looks like you're just going in circles, right?
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we'll revisit things. It's not a one and done, right? Like business, there is basically nothing in business or life that is one and done.
No, absolutely. And I'll finish with one thought
Yeah.
on scaling the business, right? I talked about understanding what things look like from the eyes of whether it be your customers, whether it be your employees. Find out what they value. Their definition of value is going to be dramatically different from what your definition of value is. So always make sure that you're centering things around their perspective. That's what I genuinely believe a brand is. It's that gut reaction in the hearts and minds of your whether it be employees or customers, right?
Hmm.
However, what is all of that from a scaling standpoint? What does all that represent from a number standpoint? Well, start looking at it from an acceleration or a deceleration of decision making. At
Hmm.
the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to is decision science, right? That's where we excel at is being able to create this sort of a gut reaction in the hearts and minds of whoever you're targeting in a way that they buy into your brand a lot faster. If you're selling a product, if you're selling an outcome, if you're selling whatever that looks like, they buy into it in a way that makes them prefer you over your competition. They do it in a way where their decision making, their level of urgency is there so that they're no longer saying, you know what, I want to push back on this price. Give it to me at a lower price, right? They're more apt to come back if you've, of course, delivered on what you've promised and they see that there's value to what you bring to the place and that perceptually that's, now become their reality. They're more likely to come back to you. Their lifetime value of that particular client has increased. Their ability to come back and say, you know what, you sold me this the last time I purchased from you. Well, tell me what else you got. Right
Yeah.
now, you're able to, there's more cross sell and upsell opportunities. Really, those are the things that over time are going to accumulate.
Yeah.
And that is going to increase not just the scalability of your company, but the enterprise value of your company. You sold a business. So, imagine how important it is for you to be able to get a premium multiple for something that you've poured your blood, sweat, and tears about into.
Yeah.
And so really that's what that's what I would like to leave the audience with is don't think, marketing is more of a short-term tactical approach to things, whereas brand actually has a long-term and has a long-term impact on the valuation of your business. And it may not be as important or seem as important to you today, but here's one thing: 75 to 80% of a business owner's net worth is tied to their business. Start thinking about it from that perspective. 75 to 80% of your net worth is going to be tied to your business, no matter what other propaganda you might be getting dumped with on social media,
Yeah.
right? About, hey, look at this income stream, look at this income stream. And now it's great for us to have multiple income streams. But at the end of the day, once you go into valuing your business, that's what's going to end up happening.
I love that.
And you're either going to get a premium multiple for your business based off of what you've done and what you've invested into, whether it be from a brand that gets the buy-in from your employees, that gets the buy-in from your customers, or you've underinvested into that. Well, there's going to be a return on that investment in the long run, whether it be a low investment or a high investment.
I love that. I think that's a great final thing to leave people with, that, the value of brand and the symbiosis with those elements that you described, right? Client's perception of value, increasing your share of wallet, lifetime value, repeat customer, even referral from that customer to others.
Absolutely.
Those are fundamentals to the formula of growth, right?
And start quantifying that and start putting that into, start creating some visibility on that. And that's what I find founder-led businesses to kind of fall short on, again, putting together the visibility around all of that. And again, that all does go back to valuation. That all does go back to exactly what that exit multiple is going to look like.
Absolutely. Owais, thank you so much for everything you've shared. We have a quick rapid fire questions I like to finish on, and then we'll make sure everyone knows where to find you, because I'm sure there are people listening thinking, oh shit, we need what you are doing with the visual cue. So really
rapid fire. Okay, let me take a deep breath and make sure I'm ready for this.
You can pass. It can be a one-word answer. It's just a quick insight.
Oh man.
All right.
This is the piece that we didn't prepare for yesterday.
Of course not.
Oh, great.
But you can always pass.
Let's see if I can maintain a poker face through this. Let's
Amazing.
do it.
What is one decision that changed everything for you as a leader?
One decision that changed everything for me as a leader. Man, that's a thinker. It's supposed to be a rapid fire.
Yeah.
One decision that changed everything for me as a leader was certainly it goes back to that story. I made a wrong hire.
Yeah, absolutely. What does strategy feel like when you're doing it well?
When we're doing strategy well, we know what to anticipate.
I like it.
We know, actually, I'm going to rephrase that. When strategy feels like we're doing it well, we know, and our clients know how to anticipate change.
Like that. Is there a book, a podcast, or a person that really cracked something open for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. Life-changing, and perspective changing, primarily because up till that point, I was going into anything that was negotiations based, thinking that it was going to be I was going to come out bloody, or the other person was going to come out bloody. And Chris Voss's book just dramatically changed the perspective on that, and made me start to think that it was going to be a partnership-led type of a negotiation rather than something that was going to be an opposition-led.
Love it. What's something you've said never again to in your business?
Never again to. Never settle for less.
Like it. And if you had a free weekend and zero obligations, how would you spend it?
Free weekend, zero obligations. That probably depends on what time of the year. If it's during the winter time, certainly I'd be up in the mountains snowboarding. If it's during the the warmer time of the year, I'd probably stay up in the mountains and I'd probably be hiking that exact same mountain.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Owais. If people are looking to connect to you, to the Visual Q team, if they want to learn more about brand and how it can lead, their business growth, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Best way to reach out to me, you can visit my website, visualq.com. That's the visualcue.com. Or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, LinkedIn /Owais CUE, I think, or it's either Owais.cue, one or the other. I can't remember.
We'll make sure it's all linked in the show notes. So that's perfect.
All right. Fantastic.
Thank you again for all your shares and your generosity with your time. It's been such a pleasure.
No, absolutely, Alex. And thank you for inviting me on.
That's a wrap for this episode of Builders, where we get real about what it actually takes to grow companies that perform without grinding you into the ground. If today's convo sparks something for you, here's what to do next. Follow the show, drop a 5-star review, and share it with someone else who's building big. Don't let it be lonely at the top. If you're ready for more clarity, more leadership freedom, and less of a duct tape and go growth vibe, let's connect. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth. Walk away with a personalized fix-it list that gives you the clarity you've been craving on what to shift now to regain traction and build momentum. For more tools, insights, and my no-fluff takes on leadership and scaling strategically, join the Builders Club, also linked in the show notes. You can also head over to leaderswhobuild.com, where you'll find all the links to peep my creds, see client wins, or just confirm that yes, I went to the gym today. Until next time, keep leading boldly, building smart, and living success on your terms.